New York.
Apple.
Hot dogs.
Dollar.
Hollywood.
Democracy.
Freedom. Rock and roll.
Wall Street.
Statue of Liberty.
Los Angeles, California.
McDonald's. Jeans.
Bubblegum. Video games. Nintendo.
What's so great about America?
Every Saturday night, 7 to 9 p.m., explore American culture and language.
With Master Steve,
Ina MK,
And Hasba Cutie.
tune in to find out about what makes America so great.
The Great American Weekend. Listen exclusively on Radio Van 103.1.
Also, watch us on the Radio Von Facebook page, website, and mobile app.
Hello from the Great American Weekend. Well, hello and good evening, dear ladies and gentlemen. We're here again. It's a Saturday night, and this is Radio Van. This is our episode number 7, and our theme is immigration and assimilation. Tune in on or watch us live on Radio Van FM 103.1 or on our official website, which is www.radiovan.fm. Tonight in the studio, I'm with Master Steve, as you see or hear. Good evening.
You sound sad about that. Why are you sad that I'm here?
No. I'm happy that you're here, but I'm sad that we're missing our friend and colleague, Hasba Cutie. And now, let's greet him.
Hey, Hasba.
Hasba, how are you doing? Hope you're doing good, and hope that we will see you next Saturday. Also, I would like to mention. Hello from the Great American Weekend. Yeah. I would also like to mention that we are going to have a guest, Sonya Armaghanyan. She'll be our guest later on the show. She won the 2018 Swiss Humanitarian Award from Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. What did she do to receive such a prestigious award? Find out later tonight, right?
Yeah, she'll be joining us. She'll be able to explain that. Let us know what's going on.
And how are you doing, Steven?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm doing great. So,
great.
Yeah, great on the Great American Weekend. So, one of the things that we'll be talking about a little bit tonight, and it kind of transitions in to what Sonya will be talking about when she joins us. Mm-hmm. Immigration in the U.S. is a really hot topic these days, and there's a lot of controversy over it and how people talk about it and the words used and the laws and all of this stuff. I guess we could do several shows on it. It's so big.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to talk too much tonight about policy or laws or things like that, because actually I would like to do it when Hasba is with us, because we've, I think, got some differing views on this sort of thing. So it would be interesting for us to kind of discuss and debate. Yeah, we should.
Immigration episode 2.
Immigration policy and laws and whatnot. But for right now, just the idea, talking a little bit about some terminology and some things and why it's such a hot issue in the U.S. And then focusing more on why or what happens with immigrants. I mean, why do they want to go someplace? Why countries like America either want or don't want immigrants? Just real, in general, overview. And then kind of what happens once they're there. And one of the things, if you saw the quotes that we shared on our Facebook group yesterday from the 2 Roosevelt presidents.
But we also have some quotes for today, of course.
But, the sort of dualism of the approach to immigration in America, to a certain extent, the Franklin Roosevelt quote mentions the fact that almost everybody in America is an immigrant or the descendant of immigrants. And as a result, you can't talk about immigration in America without saying that, well, that's what brought me here as an American, but then at the same time, should we regulate immigration? How much immigration is too much immigration? And then the Teddy Roosevelt, the first Roosevelt president, quote that we shared yesterday, saying, and this is kind of a controversial topic right now,
It is.
Within 5 years, an immigrant to America should have learned English or they should get out. So, the idea that...
Either learn English or leave the country.
Yeah. Learn it or get out. Now, in Armenia, is there an official language?
Of course.
And what is
Armenian.
it? Okay. During the Soviet era, what was the official language?
We have we had two official languages, Russian and Armenian.
Yeah.
And actually, there are still generations who speak good Russian. My parents' generation does, and so do I. But I'm trying to teach my son English, Russian, and English as well. But I'm not sure if he'll get the level of Russian that we did back in our school, because now it's a bit different, and Russian is considered a foreign language.
Yeah. Well, English is considered a foreign language here too as well. I mean, really, the official language is Armenian here. But in the U.S., despite what people might think, there is no official language. Things happen in English most of the time. Laws are in English. The kind of cultural and political debates take place in English, but there is no actual law stating that English is the official language. In fact, the founding fathers of the United States, like Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, specifically did not set an official language. And in part it was because they knew that America was going to be a nation of immigrants. One of the languages that was brought up when they were thinking about doing an official language was, do you know what? Really kind of an odd thing if you think about it now, but at the time it made sense. Ancient Greek was one of the languages.
I would never think about ancient.
Yeah, can you imagine if they had gone through with that and Americans, the official language of the American government
really
was ancient Greek?
But there is another situation happening in LA specifically with the Armenian diaspora and Armenian community there. I'm sorry. I just have to speak about this. There are a lot of people who left for the U.S. and they've lived there for many, many years, but they're so away from assimilation that they still know like a couple of words in English.
Yeah. Well, okay, but maybe we should take a time out just for a second and explain what do we mean by assimilation?
We should take a time out and go on an advertisement break.
Well, okay, that's an even better reason to take a time out.
And let's think what to say next after our break. So this is the Great American Weekend. Stay tuned. We'll be back. Don't go anywhere. And we have an interesting guest later on tonight, so make sure you don't miss her talk on air.
So then I tell the bartender, no, you keep the change.
Guys, I don't get it.
Ina, it's an American thing.
Learn more about American humor on Great American Weekend.
Welcome back to the Great American Weekend. I am Master Steve here with Ina MK.
And we just heard Hasva Cutie's voice.
Yeah, we miss him.
Yeah,
he's with us in voice.
Yeah, he's with us in voice and his soul. And we'll take this moment to say hello. And we cannot tell you guys why he's not here because.
But he might join us later and fill you in.
Maybe
by phone, I think.
That was a surprise.
So let's get back to assimilate.
Okay, let's do that.
Assimilate is a word that basically means to integrate, but that might not help because that's another big word, isn't it?
Similar?
To make some, or to consider something to be, or to make something to be similar or like something else. So when we're talking about immigration, to assimilate, or an even more technical term would be to acculturate, would be for the immigrant who comes from another culture to move into this new place and to make themselves part of, or like and part of, the new culture that they're in. And so you were talking about Glendale.
Yeah, I was. Well, most of the friends from my generation who left for the U.S., well, the younger generation, okay, they are kind of different. They try to assimilate. I'm going to use the word. They try to integrate in the community, learn the language, work, get good jobs, take trainings, and to grow in general. But there is a certain generation or a certain kind of people,
type of person.
Type of people who just stay there for long years, but they stay as Armenian as they used to be before moving to the U.S. And I'm not necessarily saying that people should change and forget where they come from, but there are also some sort of things that you need to learn.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's part of the tension of being an immigrant.
And I'm kind of
finding yourself in a new place.
So surprised how these people survive.
How much do you change to fit in? And how much do you retain of your past life, your traditions and everything? There was a joke I several years ago. And I have to admit, I've been in Armenia for quite a long time, and my Armenian is still horrible. So, if we had Teddy Roosevelt as the president of Armenia, he would probably kick me out.
Stephen, I don't agree with you. I'm sorry.
If you haven't learned English after living here for 5 years, then you should get out, says Teddy Roosevelt.
Listeners,
well,
I can speak freely in Armenian with this guy, and he understands everything, and most of the time he answers. Yeah, almost everything. Okay, so. No,
that's how I answer.
Don't pretend, please.
But there was a joke. Somebody said to me, we were at a party and people were doing toasts, and they said, "Well, Steve, you've become one of us. You're just like an Armenian." And I said, "Yeah, I'm just like an Armenian in Glendale. I've been living here for years and years and years, and I really haven't learned to speak the language." It's talking about that, and it's not a huge segment of the Armenians living in Glendale, but there is that small portion of them that get a lot of attention because they've been there for a long time and they still just don't speak any English.
And they look kind of the same. I mean, it's about everything. The way they speak, the way they look, the way they live. I bet they find lavash and dolma and eat it all the time.
Well, why not?
Yeah, well,
jeez. When I was here for a few years, and then I went to New York for 3 years. I was here for about 2.5 years, and then I was in New York for 3 years. And hey, if I could find lavash or dolma, I'd eat it in New York. Yeah, I miss that stuff when I'm not here.
Okay, but I bet you wouldn't do that all the time. So I've got some quotes here with me, and if you don't mind, I'm going to share it with you. It's about immigration. The first is, the truth is immigrants tend to be more American than people born here. Also, this is what Chuck Palahniuk says, and this is kind of the opposite of what we were speaking about, about the Armenians. But what do you think he means by saying that?
Honestly, I don't know. But that's one of the things about America. And being American. What is it to be American? I love it here when people ask me, like, what are you? Mm-hmm. And they mean, like, what ethnicity are you? What nationality are you? And for Americans, and I think even for Europeans to a certain extent, it's what passport do you hold? Right? Mm-hmm. And so people ask me, I say, well, I'm an American. And they're like, no. That's a citizenship. That's not a nationality. And to a certain extent, I have to agree, because unlike unlike a lot of places, especially in Europe or here in Armenia, you are Armenian because, what is it to be Armenian, Ina?
Oh, being Armenian is to have a big luggage with you.
When you travel, to take a lot.
Luggage of history. This is what I meant.
Okay. So metaphorically, to have a lot of baggage to carry with you.
There's a lot of history to remember, to honor, but also there is another side of it that we need to move on with certain things to grow.
But if you were to meet someone somewhere, let's say you were in America and you met somebody who said, "Wow, well, I'm Armenian too." How would you test whether they're telling you the truth or not, or whether they're really Armenian?
I'm gonna keep this intrigue and share it with you after the break.
She's got to think it over because it's not an easy question.
Yeah, it's not an easy question. I need to Google.
No, I want to know what you think.
Come on. I'm joking. This is the Great American Weekend with Steven, Master Steve.
And Ina MK. And we'll be back after this short break.
Stay tuned.
Hey, where are you off to?
I'm playing soccer.
You lost your sock?
No, I'm playing soccer. What you call football?
No, you don't say soccer. You say football.
Join us on the Great American Weekend and learn about different sports from America and around the world.
Welcome back to the Great American Weekend on Radio Vaughn 103.1.
Yes, we're back.
So, and I posed a question to you, Ina, just before the break. You had a lot of time to think about it.
I promise I was not Googling quote.
What does it mean to be Armenian? Does it have to do with language or food or religion, or what is it? What's at the heart of being Armenian?
I guess, well, besides culture, history, and everything, which is obvious.
Which is a lot. Which is almost everything. Culture.
I would say it's always the tendency to fight for your place under the sun.
Okay.
And making sure that you don't stay unnoticed.
Okay.
By the rest of the world.
Okay.
This is very important for our nation.
And for America, it's hard to define what it is to be an American, really, aside from actual citizenship, having that passport or that birth certificate that says that you're an American, because we are a nation of immigrants from all sorts of different places. And so the languages of our ancestors and the culture and the traditions, and you have American Armenian, Italian American, you have, Dutch American, all of these different kind of, mixtures.
And you have kind of a really cool
I actually said I
blood.
I blabbed a little bit. The Italian American and Dutch American. That's my background, ethnically, culturally. And actually, we're going to be talking a little bit about that next week. We're going to be talking about kind of ancestors and roots.
Right.
So we'll get into that a little bit more personally next week. But I think personally, when I studied in Italy for a semester, and for me, when I was in college, so that was in the mid-90s, and for me, that was a really important thing to do because my last name is Italian, kind of the predominant culture.
I love the way it sounds.
The predominant sort of American / culture for me was the Italian, so Italian American. And so it was really great for me to go there and experience Italy. And I kept on thinking while I was there, but what does it mean to be an American? Because America doesn't have the long history and the language and the art
Right.
You know, you look at currency around the world, and this is one thing I like to say. You look at currency, the dollar bills or the coins of countries around the world, and you see what's on those coins, and that kind of, I think, tells you a little bit about their culture. You know, in Europe, the euro has art, you know, scientists,
Right.
artists,
We
writers.
also have
that's
writers, artists.
yeah. In America,
You have God on a dollar.
well, of course, he's actually right there. Picture no, we in God we trust.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any exception to this. All of the people that are on American currency are political. The founding fathers, great presidents. You know, we had the Susan B. Anthony coin, she was very important in the women's suffrage movement, and so it's very much political, and not political in terms of like political debate or political parties. It's very political in the sense that it's about the government and about the system of government.
Is this a priority thing?
I think so. I mean, as far as I can tell, what American culture is at its heart is a sort of belief in the governmental system, in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, in the election system, in the courts of law, and that sort of thing. And so it isn't a culture in the same way that it is to be Armenian or Italian or Dutch or anything like that. And we'll talk a little bit more. I mean, we're going to come back around and talk about, I hope, your experience,
Of course.
in America.
I'm ready to share
Okay.
my experience, but before first we're gonna listen to Beth Hart.
One of
and
your favorites. You picked this one, didn't you?
Yeah. And well, actually, thanks to Mary. So the song is called "Your Heart Is as Black as Night."
Ooh, that's not a compliment.
Yeah, and it's not about America.
Oh, I hope not.
Yeah. Stay tuned. We'll be back soon. Beth Hart, thank you. Thank you for this beautiful song, which we were enjoying. And we come back to our theme.
Assimilation,
Immigration, fitting in, adopting.
Here on the Great American Weekend, Radio Von.
With
So Ina
Master Steve.
and Ina MK.
And hello to Aramas.
Yeah.
Hasva
Hasva.
QT. So, I've told about this, my experience back in the US so many times that there are some phrases that I even know by heart already.
You can go on autopilot and just kind of turn off the brain, let the mouth run.
Sometimes, just a couple of sentences. And of course, back then my English vocab was a lot more better than now, but I'm working on that. So.
Oh, come on. It's not bad at all.
Thank you, Stephen. We're complimenting each other on language tonight. You're a great Armenian speaker and understander. Oh, well. Yeah,
so what brought you to America? When did you go? How long were you there?
Oh, I'm being interviewed.
Yes.
Nice. Okay, so we were speaking about fitting and not fitting, adopting. And so the first, it all started from Flex exchange program, Future Leaders program, which I participated in, really accidentally. And I need to confess that my best friend and I just went there to skip the classes. It was math or something. And we heard that there was some competition going on in the state library, and 9th and 10th grade students from school were free to participate. So we were like, oh, let's go, we'll skip classes and see what's going on there. And so that we went there, and we needed to have our birth certificates. So there was this guy at the entrance who said, oh, girls, sorry, you don't have your birth certificates with you, so you cannot participate. And I was like, okay, cool, bye, see you. And then he goes like, well, okay, we can do an exception, just get in and you'll bring them tomorrow. We're like, okay. So
Did you bring them the next day?
Yeah, we did. So to make the long story short, this was the first, the first stage of this contest, and then we passed it, and then was the second and the third one already, which was getting serious, and we were like, okay, Anna. Yeah, by the way, hello, Anna. She lives in New York. My friend,
the city that never sleeps.
Yeah. So we were like, okay, Anna, we need to tell our parents because it's getting
we need
serious.
to tell our parents that we're going to run away and live in America for a while.
So there was this last level that we needed to pass, which already was like a huge essay about the family, allergies, health, community, and everything. It included a lot of information. I had the feeling that I was flying to the space.
So you were well vetted. They did a good checkup on you before they allowed you to go.
So, speaking of my experience, I've mentioned it so many times that it was a growing experience for me, and indeed it was, because my flex year has made me who I am.
So you were
today.
There for an entire year?
Yes, it was one
an entire
academic
year. So from September until June.
Summer, yeah.
Okay.
June or July.
And how old were you when you went?
I was 15, turned
15.
sweet 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were, what, a sophomore in high school?
No, I was a senior. I was the youngest senior in our class.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because
because I wanted to participate in the prom, and
Okay.
I had requested from our the principal of the school, and I passed a couple of tests, and they said, okay. You're our smart,
so you went
smart
there,
pumpkin.
you left here, you knew English,
Yeah.
but you really had no experience of America.
Oh, this is a story I need to tell.
So you went there and you spent an entire academic year there, and you came back completely changed, and you were no longer Armenian, you were an American.
No, of course not. Thank you for your question, Steve. Well, at first, the English that I learned here was totally different from the English that I
It was British English,
heard.
or was it Russian English?
Well, British. Also, it was British English. London is the capital of Great Britain and stuff like that. So when I went there,
here in Armenia, there's American English, there's British English, and there's Russian English.
and Armenian English.
And I don't know if the Armenians really have
Hello,
their
Anna.
own. Yeah.
Okay, so and no Armenian. That was the rules. No Armenians. For half a year, you cannot interact with your friends or anything, or if you do,
Which was
easier
to accomplish back then, before the internet and cell phones with Messenger and all that kind of stuff.
Only with parents. Armenian only with parents. So at the beginning I thought, oh my goodness. At the end of the day, I was so overwhelmed with English and with information that I was trying to understand, and people looking at their mouth and trying to figure out what they say. Well, of course I got the general idea, but to get the English is really hard at the beginning. But then 1 month and I was assimilated. And also
So you fit right in? Nobody could tell that you were not American?
Well, not really, but I was I had friends all over the place. I felt really good. I felt like home. And also but I also didn't forget where I come from. So we mentioned assimilating and also remembering where you come from. I mean, adapting, but keeping your identity. Yeah. So I was kind of a walking Wikipedia thing with a map in the pocket. So whenever Romania, Albania, I'm like, okay, no, just listen. Look, this is the map. You see this little spot on the map. This is our country. And then I was starting to tell all the cultural and information, history, blah blah blah, everything you can imagine.
So I mean, did being in America, I mean, you learned a lot there, English and a lot of like pop culture, entertainment stuff, and stuff about American education and the whole high school culture, which we're going to have to do an episode on that.
Yeah.
Because that's interesting, isn't it?
Cool. We had pajama days at school. It was awesome. You never do this in Armenia.
No.
So many other things.
But I don't know. It sounds like because you had to keep on talking about Armenia and explaining yourself, did maybe being in America actually kind of reinforce or help define your Armenianness?
I would say it helped me to reevaluate and value and cherish certain things that maybe I didn't before.
Okay. Because not realizing how... Because before that, you had never left Armenia, had you?
Right. It was my first long flight.
Okay.
First flight.
First flight?
Yeah.
Wow. And that's a long one for your first flight.
Halfway around the world.
That is quite a hike. So maybe it was, I mean, you learned about America. It changed you. How did the whole experience change you? And just like a few specific things, maybe.
Of course. First of all, when you go through struggles, because it is a struggle, culture shock, total different mentality, worldviews, culture, and also I was considered, I was a city girl, used to this rhythm, and then back in the US I was living on a farm with my host family, so it was really difficult and different. So this kind of makes you become more flexible. I think this is where it comes from also, and to think out of box. This is something that you get and you bring back to your country, and these are the qualities that you later on use in your life. So be that work or anything else you're facing. So this is a great thing. And now we're going to face some advertisement.
Okay.
And we'll be back with a couple of more questions addressed to Ina, to myself.
I'll continue the interrogation.
Okay. Stay tuned. This is a Great American Weekend with Master Steve.
And Ina MK.
And also, do not miss Sonya later on during our show.
Hey, what kind of fixins do you like on your hot dog?
Fixins?
Yeah, relish, onions, mustard, ketchup, condiments.
Conda?
No, not that.
Oh, fixins. I love chili dogs.
Learn about American cuisine on the Great American Weekend.
Welcome back to the Great American Weekend on Radio Vaughn.
Hello again.
I'm Master Steve, and I've got Ina MK here with me.
Hey, boy.
And now we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about news and current events.
Yeah, here we go.
So what started just a few days ago is this sort of yearly tradition, ritual madness in the U.S., March Madness, which is what we call the tournament, the basketball tournament for the NCAA Division I basketball
so it's not
team.
Connected with the weather, because we call March Mad March.
Yeah, well, Mad is a March
weather.
hare.
Yeah.
Mad is a March hare, and well, the hares in March are mad for a very specific reason.
You want to talk about it?
No, not really.
Okay. Okay,
I think that's more Hazvakiti's area, right?
Yeah, we'll leave it to him. Okay, so March Madness. Yeah, Adamas says hi.
Oh, awesome. Hello.
There is a comment from him. Hey, guys.
Yeah.
So, hey, Adamas Jan, how are you? And we are expecting for you to call. Are you going to call us? Who...
Whoa.
Okay.
So NCAA is the National College Athletic Association. So it's the organization that organizes sports for the colleges in the United States. And Division I is the division or the segment that contains the largest universities. So the college that I went to, St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota, was very small. You know, we had like maybe 4,000 students total. And so we were Division III, like the smallest of the small. Division One are huge universities. The universities that you guys have probably heard about, like University of Minnesota, Michigan State, Michigan University, North Carolina, University of Southern California, these really big schools. So this is a basketball tournament at the end of the basketball season, the men's basketball season, where the best teams play, and at the end, you've got the champion. So it starts off with 64 teams, and that was a few days ago. Now we're down to 32 teams. And there's round 1, round 2, and we're in the middle of round 2. And then after round 2 is over,
we're in the middle of the
got a phone
news,
call.
and we got a phone call. Okay, let's see who this is. I know who this is. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, this is Hazva QT. Live from,
Hello. So this is March Madness for your appendix. This is what you wrote in the comments.
my buddy, you've got some explaining to do. Or maybe you don't want to. Maybe you want to be mysterious.
I mean, I could basically, I could offer some people a possibility to assume what might have happened to my appendix, considering the March Madness comment. Yeah, it's a pleasure to join you guys live via the telephone from a hospital and listening to how March Madness is crazy right now and is a totally rigged sport. I think college basketball is a totally rigged sport.
Adamas, do you see us also right now? We're waving at you.
I wish I could see you, but unfortunately, I can't speak and watch at the same time.
Oh,
You're a single device man right now. You've got your phone, but you don't have your computer with you.
No,
Okay.
I don't. I do not. Yeah.
We were expecting for your call. It's so cool that you called. So
it's fantastic that I can do this because I would love to be live somewhere else doing something cooler than laying down in a hospital bed.
But you are in good hands, and they took out that pesky little appendix that was about to blow up and make a mess of your insides. And you need to rest and let the doctors take care of you for a while, and we'll catch up with you next week.
and
right?
make sure you behave, Adamas, because
Oh, well, I love to ask a bunch of different questions to the doctors here and the nurses.
Oh, I bet.
But yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for all your love and support, and I'll see you guys next week, God willing.
So show them all what March Madness is.
I got two drainage bags that are showing me every moment what March Madness looks like.
That's something else.
Take care, guys.
Take care.
Thanks for calling, and make sure if you have questions to our guests, you can feel free to participate with comments.
Okay, we'll do. We'll absolutely do that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Take a good care of yourself. Hasfa.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Get well.
See you guys. Love you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We too.
So yeah, it starts with 64. The teams play down to 32, then down to the Sweet 16, then the Elite 8 and the Final 4, and then the championship game. And actually this year, the Final 4 is going to be played in my hometown, Minneapolis, Minnesota, in this new, I think it was $1 billion stadium that they completed about 3 years ago called US Bank Stadium. So if I was back home in Minnesota, I'd be going to basketball games in a couple of weeks and seeing the best of college basketball.
Yeah.
So that when people in America talk about March Madness, that's what they're talking about. And when they talk about brackets, the whole structure that the tournament is in, people do bets and pools on the games.
We also do that.
Yeah. So it's a big thing in the U.S.
We had a really
for,
good basketball team in our high school back in the U.S.
Yeah.
Cougars.
Cool. And I mean, that's one of the things you'd think that with school and sports, because here in Armenia, they don't really have teams
we don't really have that.
for the schools. And a lot of people think that it's kind of frivolous and stupid. Why should schools have, sports teams and whatever? But I mean, firsthand, if your high school in the U.S. had a good basketball team, what that does to
Yeah.
the school and to the student body and to the,
the team thinking.
just the whole team spirit, and it can really help boost and make community. I never went to a school that had a great basketball team, so March Madness was always about just watching and hey, whatever. But I know people that went to these schools that are in the tournament year after year, and it's a huge thing. If you get to the Final Four, they might even cancel classes at the school
I wanted to be a cheerleader
and organize buses for students to travel across the country to go see the games, because it's such a great thing for school spirit and for unity and for people getting along and being proud of where they are. So yeah,
Right.
sports are not
And
always just frivolous things when it comes to schools and universities.
sport was a big deal back in the US, and actually I was trying to do the basketball thing with our girl team, and also at first I was trying to become a cheerleader.
Cheerleaders.
You know what it's all about.
Cheerleaders, yeah. Well, I
It takes
played.
a lot of time and effort.
Oh
though.
yeah, it's not easy. It's not
And-
easy.
Yeah, all these slogans and
School
rhymes.
spirit. School
Yeah,
spirit.
school
So,
spirit.
what do you have for us, Eno? What news story do you have for us?
Oh, of course, I have some. And we can start with some happy news.
Oh, please, happy news.
Yeah, happy news. Okay, here we go. Armenia improves positions in World Happiness Report by 13 points.
Oh, nice.
The United Nations has released its World Happiness Report, where Armenia has improved its positions by 13 points compared to the previous year.
Okay, now
Okay.
why might that be? Nothing big has happened in Armenia in the past year that would make people here happier.
Were you absent during the last spring?
Only the biggest thing,
Yeah.
in the history of
Do you
modern
travel a lot,
Armenia.
Steven?
No, I was
Especially
here.
during the
Oh
springtime.
no, I was there.
Okay.
I wore
I
out a pair
know.
of shoes.
Also, Emmy did.
Yeah.
So
Oh, she wasn't using her shoes. She was on my
she was
shoulders
a
lot.
celebrity. Okay, so another news is U.S. Alabama state recognizes Armenian genocide. Woohoo! Thanks to Alabama. This is exciting news for us. So we have only one state left to recognize the Armenian genocide, which is which state was it? Mississippi.
Oh, okay. But you have to realize that really doesn't mean anything.
The whole country.
No, it doesn't, because the state governments can do things and the federal government can just ignore it and not bother with it. So
Steven,
even
you're breaking my heart.
even if all 50 states recognize it, that means nothing to the federal government, the U.S. national government.
So what will be the next step?
There's no connection there with something like that
At all?
between the states recognizing it and and what has always been an issue with the United States government recognizing the Armenian genocide is the foreign policy consequences that it might have. And states can go ahead and recognize it because the states don't have foreign policy. An individual state in the United States has no real direct connection with Turkey, so it doesn't matter.
A lot
if
of buzz
Mississippi-
around nothing.
Kind of, yeah. It's not until the federal government in Washington D.C. and even when they do, I mean, it's going to be
Still a lot
a
of time.
symbolic. It's going to be a symbolic recognition. It's not like anything will actually change in U.S. law or U.S. textbooks or U.S. anything. It's more symbolic than anything else.
Okay, Steven, thank you.
Sorry,
That wasn't a bad happy
I'm
news.
I'm raining on your parade.
You're
which,
keeping the balance.
Do you know that
Please.
phrase? Raining
No.
on your parade.
Well, I
mean,
kind of guess.
Yeah,
It's
you know,
like
if you've got
pooping on the parade.
Well, that's the less polite. There are less polite ways to say rainy. You can say you're pissing on my parade.
Yeah,
and that's got the nice little
is...
that's got the nice little alliteration, pissing on parades and whatever. But I mean, when a parade's going on, like a picnic, man, you need good weather. If it's raining out, then the parade is going to have to be canceled, and it's just going to be no fun. So
another, speaking of last spring, we'll have a new holiday, Citizens Day. So on March 21st, Cabinet meeting agenda includes a bill on amending the law of public holidays of Armenia to create a new holiday, the Day of Citizen of Republic of Armenia. If confirmed, the Citizens Day will be celebrated on the last Saturday of April. Why? Because the purpose of the new holiday is to honor the unprecedented political situation that took place in April of 2018. The mass peaceful protests, the Velvet Revolution.
The Velvet Revolution.
Yeah.
So, I've got another American story, and it's one that I mentioned a few weeks ago, and I have to apologize for being kind of swept up in the hysteria that is all too often a part of American news and American politics these days. If you guys are regular listeners to the show, a few weeks ago, I said, hey, the Mueller investigation is going to wrap up, and Mueller is going to issue his report on this investigation that he's been doing for the last 22 months. We thought it was imminent, or at least that's what the talking heads said. That's what the experts on the news said, that it's imminent. It's going to happen right now.
Talking head?
Oh, yeah, talking heads. Well,
there you go.
Talking heads is one of those things where if you see the newscasters or people on television, where you just see their shoulders and their head and their face, it's like a close-up shot
the head
of
in
them.
the TV.
And they just talk. And it has kind of a negative connotation to it, a negative shade to it, because the talking heads don't necessarily really know anything. They're not necessarily writing what they're not necessarily writing what they're reading. They're just sitting there writing and telling you what the people in charge want you to hear. Okay, so the talking heads. But so the Mueller investigation wrapped up, and this was an investigation that was supposed to uncover Russian influence on the 2016 presidential campaign that Donald Trump won. And the main point was to find out if Trump himself or people really close to him cooperated or colluded with the Russians in order to influence the outcome of the election.
I need to interrupt you for a second. We have plenty of comments by Aramas. It was like, revolution, Alabama recognizing the Armenian genocide.
Well, actually, let me just wrap this up. So Mueller finished his report and gave it to the Attorney General. And now the Attorney General is going to have to look at it and decide what parts of it to make public or not, and what parts of it to give to Congress, the U.S. Congress. He'll probably give certain parts to the U.S. Congress and then give less to the general public. So even though the report has now been finished and given to the Attorney General, we still don't really know what's in it, aside from the fact that an official at the Attorney General's office had said that there are going to be no new charges, which means the idea that Trump himself did something illegal during the election in terms of colluding with the Russians is pretty much not, there's no evidence for it at this point. But over the next few days, we'll probably learn more about what exactly that report says. And
of course, we'll share it with you guys. Thank you, Stephen.
If you're not tired of that subject already.
I think people who are listening to us, they're not. So Aramas says there is an opinion regarding the Alabama recognizing the Armenian genocide. So Aramas says it creates a foundation for all the states to accept the genocide, which sets a precedent for a vote in D.C. It's not a guaranteed option, but it's something that doesn't hurt in gaining national acceptance. Thank you, Aramas. We need to go on an advertisement break, after which we're gonna meet our guest. Yes. Stay tuned. This is the Great American Weekend.
Oh, say, can you see?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed?
Adamast, what are you doing?
He's trying not to forget where he came from. Welcome back to the Great American Weekend on Radio Vaughn. And we finally have our lovely guest with us.
The red
for this
shoes
episode.
lady on the red couch.
Sonya. So we've been talking, I mean, it was a little maybe misleading that when we said we were going to be talking about immigration, right? Because really what we've been talking about is identity and fitting in and assimilation. And those are kind of social aspects.
Those are all connected.
But they're kind of the social aspects of immigration, not the political or legal aspects of immigration. And well, what's the title of the paper, your dissertation that you won the award for?
Theater as Psychosocial Approach in Humanitarian Settings.
Time out.
Slower.
Psychosocial.
Yes.
That's like crazy people who like going to parties?
No.
No,
not
psychos who are social? You gotta explain this term to us.
Psychosocial media.
No, not at all. Nothing like that at all.
No crazy people.
No crazy people for sure. Psychosocial means the word itself, and there's actual definition in Oxford English Dictionary for it. To paraphrase it or to put it in kind of simpler words, it's about the individual psyche, so your own individual mind, your own behavior, and how social factors from your environment influence the individual behavior, mindset, creating a certain identity. But then it goes even further, where how the interrelation of the individual plays with the society, like wider society and the community.
Okay, so
it's the interrelation of all these elements together.
So there's not just a way that society shapes the individual, but there's also, it's a two-way street.
It is
goes
a two-way
in both
street.
directions?
Yes, I would say it is. However, it's about how the social factors around us and the space and the environment that we live in shapes us.
Okay.
Our individual behavior, the mindset, the belief system, the identity. Okay. And then how with this identity you go back out into the space and interact with other people.
Okay, and what are some of the elements or the factors that make up the social setting?
What do you mean by make up the social setting?
Well, I mean, you said there are things in society, in the culture, that help shape the person.
Honestly, I personally think it can be anything. Okay. It can be situation, just a singular situation, and it can be in a much wider sense, the culture, the religion, the language, the people around you, your personal experiences, but also your collective experiences as a community. The collective part is also a very important element of psychosocial, because psychosocial is not only about your own personal well-being, but the well-being of community.
The society
it's
in
about
general.
Collective well-being and having this sense of belonging to not only a geographical location, but also the community. So your identity interacting and having a role, like knowing yourself, who you are, but then also knowing where you stand. What is your role in society?
Okay, so this is a much wider thing than just an individual like going to therapy and trying to sort themselves out. This is also...
I mean, of course, therapy is also part. With therapy, you can better the psychosocial well-being of a person. But the part that psychosocial also comprises the collective healing. So you can get to that maybe with group therapy, for example, because there is a way of doing group therapy. But it can also be even larger.
I
Okay.
promise that we'll have a bigger segment after the
Well,
advertisement
now
break.
we have to. What we're going to have to do at the next segment is connect psychosocial to theater.
Theater. Yes, that's my favorite part.
I guess it will be also my favorite part because I love theater. So we
But
have.
now we have to pay the bills,
Yeah.
and we'll give you some nice music to listen to after the advertisements as well, right?
Sure.
What song do we have?
What song do we have? What song do we have? We have.
We'll surprise you, and
Yeah,
we'll tell you about it when we
We'll
get
tell
back.
you about
So,
it later. So stay tuned. This is the Great American Weekend, and our guest is Sonya with her psycho theater.
No. No.
crazy people
That's
acting.
so wrong.
No.
This is a
No.
joke. Stay tuned.
I would never live in America.
Why not? Didn't you enjoy your time there?
Yeah, why not?
It was good, but it wasn't great.
Because you didn't know us when you were there.
Join Ina MK, Master Steve, and Hasva QT for a great American experience.
Every Saturday on the Great American Weekend.
Yeah, right.
Welcome back to the Great
Welcome
American
back to the Great
Weekend on
American
Radio
Weekend.
Vaughn. I'm Master
You're
Steve.
Master Steve, and she's Sonya, and I'm Ina.
Yeah.
And we're back in the studio. Sonya, I have a couple of questions to you before Steven steals my questions.
Okay.
And also, I have to mention that Aramast is participating, and he has a question
He's
to you
got,
as well.
he's got a question, and we'll slip it in later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Sonya, how are you connected to the U.S.? Any connections?
My first exposure to the U.S. was same as yours. I myself am a alumni of the Flex program.
Mm-hmm.
This was in 2003-2004 when I went to Michigan as an exchange student and went
Witnesses
to high
of
school
Flex.
Yeah.
I
So
feel
that was-
outnumbered and left out somehow.
So he's gathering his stuff to get out of the room. Like, oh, I'm going home.
I'm done.
Yeah, so that was my first experience with the U.S. And after that, I actually, here in Armenia, I worked as alumni coordinator for Flex at American Councils. And that was the first time when I decided I wanted to do community theater in Yerevan. So the whole kind of my love, I always had the passion for theater.
So what is community theater? What is it?
Okay, community theater is exactly what the
What
word
it says?
No. I will, community theater a lot of times can be an amateur theater group that comprises the members of the community as actors, as stage crew, directors. So not necessarily professional actors nor a professional theater as a performance, but just the community members get together. They do a show, they do a play. And in 2006, when I was working at the American Councils, and I always had a passion for theater. Since I was a little kid, for me, theater was this magical world that everything was possible. And but I never was brave enough to say, I'm going to study theater, I'm going to become an actress. So it just kind of stayed on the
Same
side. And I thought, well, you know what? But I can still do community theater. And I used my position at American Councils as an alumni coordinator to start a community theater. I met a woman, Melissa Brown, at the American University of Armenia. She was teaching there, and her background is in theater, acting and directing. So I just met with her, and I said, I don't have experience in directing. At the time, I had no experience in directing or putting a play. And I said, if you agree to direct a play, I will do everything else in terms of logistics, administrative, and we did. And the first play we did was Thornton Wilder's The Matchmaker, an American playwright.
Oh.
Nice.
We had a lot of fun, and the actors were local Armenians, diaspora Armenians, and expatriates living in Armenia. So it really had
It's basically
this
the same thing that we're doing here, connecting people.
Exactly. So for me, it was quite fascinating that all these different people came together, and then we together created and staged a performance, and how our relationships grew during the rehearsal processes and this creative process was quite amazing. Because if you ask me back then, I don't think that all the actors in that group, without participating in the theater process,
they
would
ever
actually meet and have a coffee, let's say, together.
So you
Because
had a
there
very
were
eclectic and diverse collection of
differences,
people
yes.
that were coming together for something.
So theater, connecting people.
Yeah. So now, talking about connecting, let's try to connect the dots here a little bit more. So in the first segment with you, we talked about the psychosocial and how that deals with identity and community and the kind of interplay between those and shaping both. And now we've been talking a little bit about theater. So in your dissertation, what is it? You're talking about how putting on, like, say, taking Shakespeare and doing a Shakespeare play, maybe, how that helps shape people's identities and community. So to be or not to be is...
that is one of the possibilities, but with theater, community theater, or when you use the creative process of theater for psychosocial well-being, and to explain more or connect the dots, as you said. So if psychosocial is something that investigates the link between the social factors and the individual's mind, behavior, feelings, thoughts, then theater also has that element where it allows a deeply individual process of exploration. So, for example, if in Shakespeare, you mentioned Shakespeare, you're acting Romeo or Hamlet or anyone else.
I'm more of a Hamlet kind of guy.
More of a Hamlet kind
Can
of
I be Juliet?
I'll be Hamlet, you'll be Juliet.
Okay. And we won't play together.
So through their characters, when a person assumes a role, a character, it gives you a space to explore another identity, another character, another set of emotions, beliefs, environment. And through exploration of another, it opens a window to who you are and how you relate to that other character.
So you're not talking about theater in terms of a simple work of art, like a script or a production of a play with an audience. You are talking about the process of creating a script, maybe creating a story, and the process of exploring that story with acting.
It's teamwork.
Yes, so it's quite large. That's the method that I like to use.
Okay.
When I do so for the community theater we did in 2006 with Melissa here, we took Thornton Wilder and we did a play, a pre-written script, a classic, right? But when I worked with affected communities or communities in general, doesn't have to be affected.
Well, affected communities?
Meaning, so this is the part...
like a community,
that
a community in crisis.
Community in crisis, yes. Okay. In humanitarian settings, so
whether
in crisis
that means
and
refugees
conditions,
or...
including.
Okay.
Including, yes.
Okay.
So I like to use the method of collective creation, which means that you create you have a group of people and you engage into theater workshops, the creative process of theater. And through symbolism of theater, through play and games and kind of indirect relation to you and others, you explore your own identity, the identity of others, how you all
discover your inner character within your own character, kind of.
The thing is that the identity is quite dynamic, and it's not constant. And every person has multiple identities,
Of course,
and also multiple roles. Shakespeare said that all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. And for me, that quote really shows like that connection of psychosocial and the diversity of one's identity, and how we constantly interact with other people. Also, going again back to the quote, all the world's a stage. So if we as human beings acknowledge that the human nature is inherently dramatic, and in our everyday life, we are like
that.
actors. We wake up in the morning, we have our certain routine, which is like in a rehearsal, can be a repetition. Then you put a certain dress, pant, like any certain clothing on, and you go to a meeting or work, wherever. But then depending where you go, you dress appropriately, you wear your costumes, and then you play different roles with other actors, your colleagues, your family, your friends, strangers in the street. So it is, the life itself is like a drama.
So if as Shakespeare says, and if you're what you're promoting right now, if all of life is just acting, it's a stage and we're all actors, then what are you doing
then
with
we're
these
all
affected
superstars.
with these affected communities when you kind of put them on a stage and do these kind of workshops and work through things? Then how is that different from everyday
So
life?
you don't put them on the stage. You don't.
And I'm sorry. So it's not necessarily
no.
about having a public performance
No,
at the
it's
end.
not.
That's not the goal.
It is an end product there that adds another layer to the experience, but it doesn't have to be the goal. It depends on the intervention, on the specific project, and the specific goal, whether you want it or not.
Okay, so it's
But
about the journey
also,
and not the destination.
Yes, the destination can be a huge part of it, because imagine if you're working with a community who is voicing their concerns, their inner thoughts and emotions and things they went through symbolism, play. It doesn't have to be direct autobiographical story, and they create something together. And they create a performance. To show it to their community can be quite accelerating, to show that we did this, to basically talk to your own community or the community that you're in now and communicate it and feel that you're accepted, especially if after the performance the community accepts you or understands you or is empathetic. So that adds a value. But the process is what creates the space for psychosocial well-being and exploration and understanding and reconstruction of identities.
I see that there is a whole psychological process connecting to it, to this theater. And did you initially have this goal to help people let's say fight a stage phobia, for instance, or to
no, it all kind of fell or came together because I worked in migration for several years, and I'm a humanitarian professional, but with my passion for theater and always been doing theater on the side, no matter what my professional life was, I always did theater projects on the side. And then this realization how it can be connected, it's been my dream for the past 10 years to finally like really combine it professionally, and that's what I'm trying to do now.
Right, thank you. Because there is a special psychological teaching where you discover and first search, then discover your many identities that you have inside. You have to say love each of them, give them all an equal rights to play their roles inside of you, and also to unite them. So eventually there is this psychological exercise actually. Yeah, so
So, and I guess what I was trying to get at with my last question, and you answered it, but I want to make it maybe more explicit. The idea that doing this through theater is kind of creating a safe space where they can experiment without it necessarily having at that moment or even ever affect their normal everyday life.
Yes, so the safe space is very important because once you're in that space, it's sacred. The space of theater, and this is like every professional actor and theater practitioner knows this, the space of theater is sacred place. And once you're there, there's no judgment, there's no stigma. And it's a place where through game, through symbolism, through metaphor, through kind of an indirect or like direct expression of your thoughts and emotions, but indirectly, you're able to exaggerate even your emotions, for example, and go to the extreme. Theater being very emotive and dynamic, it's also an outlet to discharge energy. So if we're talking about affected communities who go through devastation, loss, war, conflict, and displacement, imagine how much of kind of negative energy cultivates inside.
Yeah.
Theater having the body as the instrument, and to be in a theater process, you use your body to act, to express, to play with others, to interact with others. It's not an individual thing. You're in constant relation and communication with other participants. So your body, your voice allows you to discharge that energy, your thoughts, your emotions.
Because I'm from a philosophical tradition or a philosophical perspective that really values the place of art in society. You know, the Heidegger quote, art founds truth. Truth comes from art. And with him, and for me, I think it's the written word that really does that. For Heidegger, it's poetry. But I guess what you're saying is there's something more, there's something special about theater. And in fact, what you're saying, the process of theater, not just the script and not just the final performance, but the process of theater that makes it probably even better at expressing and sort of coming to a catharsis, because it is so bodily and also necessarily communal. I mean, writing a poem, writing a novel, you kind of assume an audience, but as you're creating it, there's no audience there. There's no give and take necessarily. So for you, theater, this process of theater is kind of the top because you're interacting with people and you're doing so bodily.
I personally love the process of theater. It's a place where you can be yourself, but also if you want to, you can be yourself again in a metaphorical sense. And in the process of theater, there's so many games and exercises that while they look quite simple and silly, they have certain sensitivities that without even your kind of knowing creates space of trust. And the trust that is created in the space of theater is so powerful because you see another human being in a certain way that you wouldn't if you were just sitting and asking questions like, where are you from? What do you do? Where have you been? How many siblings you have? All this kind of small talk questions. But in theater, you don't even have to ask questions. You just engage in a creative process. And you notice certain things about others, but also
about yourself.
And one of the things that I love about theater, and this is also true about final performance and the relation with the audience, where the audience or fellow participants, actors in the process, are able to see you're able to see your own self in someone else's
like
experience,
a reflection,
as a mirror. And that connection is what creates empathy. And the empathetic sharing is what makes theater very emotional, but also powerful in terms of what you were talking about, seeing the truth. Because when you're empathetic, you really understand that person's story, what that person went through or is going through. And it doesn't have to be the same experience as yours.
Sure.
But,
So, yeah.
So how can someone apply?
No, wait, because this is a huge word, I think. I read your dissertation last night, and the word empathetic is really important,
yes.
right?
For me, yes.
It gets confused with other things, right? I mean, what's the difference between empathy and sympathy and compassion? Can you?
I can try and elaborate.
If it's a bad question, just tell us to put it aside.
No. Sympathy is when you're sympathizing with someone, you may understand the person and
you acknowledge that
acknowledge the hardship the person is going through or the situation that she's in. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you feel what the person feels. Sympathy can awake pity. In a way, when you're sympathizing with someone, you might pity the person or the situation that that person is in. But empathy is that place where it makes you want to act. So when we're talking about theater for social change, why theater is a good instrument for social change? Because empathy builds and awakens empathy among people who are involved in the process, but also as an audience, you're sharing a story together in that room. And because it's live and you see actors on stage and you go through the story of the characters very directly and immediately in such a close proximity.
Ina, what would make America great again?
More barbecue.
No, we need more freedom. That's what'll make it great.
Join us on Great American Weekend.
And help us solve all of America's problems.
Every show is recorded by the NSA and sent to the White House.
Welcome back to the Great American Weekend here on Radio Vaughn. I'm Master Steve. We've got Ina MK as usual.
And our dear friend Sonya.
Yeah, and I really have to apologize. We had to cut you off there. We got to pay the bills. And I am so engrossed in this topic that I asked a question when I probably shouldn't have, because it was too close to the commercial break. So shame on me. But did you want to finish?
Worries. Just to wrap it up, basically, empathy helps a person to kind of want to act, to change something, to help. And this is so important when we work with vulnerable people, marginalized people, or people in crisis and post-crisis conditions. So not to only sympathize with their situation, but to empathize. And when you're empathizing, also a lot more kind of sensitivities come through, where you take into consideration very little things about that community, that person, and the situation. So you respond better, or in a more helpful way.
Might it be right to say that the difference between sympathy and empathy is the difference between being a spectator and being a participant?
That's I never heard that before, but that's an interesting way to see it.
Kind of, maybe.
Participating in the healing process or the helping process.
In
like
a positive way.
Feeling along with the person,
Feeling
not just
along with the person.
Yeah, because
then
feeling
everything
sorry is just you feel sorry, but when you try to help them somehow in a positive way,
that's the empathy that makes you want to really
to
do
react.
something, to react, to help. It evokes action. So that's only one of the factors of theater being an element for social change, because it builds this empathy, and through that empathetic connectedness and sharing, it makes you want to act and make things better for the community, for the society.
Sonya, I think this episode was not enough to have you in our studio, and I think we should have you from the very beginning. Thanks for accepting our invite.
For having me.
Yeah, now
I
we
hope
have
you enjoyed it and you
sit
weren't
tight.
nervous at all, because
sit tight, hang out with us, but we've got some business to do before the show wraps up tonight, right?
Yeah, we've
got one of the must-dos every week is the cultural events for this coming week.
So we have some highlights. Here we go. Movies in English that you can watch at Yerevan Mall Kino Park Cinema, March 23rd through 27th, night 9:40 p.m. Captain Marvel is still there. Steve, have you watched this one?
No, I'm not a big fan.
Do you like superhero movies?
No, I'm not a big fan of superhero stuff or of the comic book things. I don't know. In fact, I don't even really watch movies that much anymore.
Yeah.
I'm boring and dull and old, and
no, you're not.
I sit around with my books all the time.
Come on. Exhibitions. So March 28th through April 28th. For a whole month, Armenia's National Gallery will host retrospective monographic exhibition of Anatoly Grigoryan's artwork. So, for the first time, this comprehensively displayed collection embraces about 70 large-scale paintings and studies graphic papers and swift drawings of various years, while valuable samples of the artist's letters, photos, and as well as personal belongings. The event runs for a month through, as I told before, and Anatoly Grigoryan held numerous personal and group exhibitions in various different countries around the world: Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, Austria, India, US, Finland, France, Germany, and others. Okay, so you guys make sure you don't miss this exhibition. It's a big deal. It will be on for a month. So theaters, March 24th, 1 p.m., The Beauty and the Beast musical for kids. Grab your kids and go to...
And if you don't have any kids, grab some... No, don't grab somebody else's kids. That's kidnapping, isn't it?
Go to the Theater of Young Spectator. In fact, I'm going to go there with my son tomorrow. March 28th, 7 p.m., The Game at Yerevan State Pantomime Theater. So you don't need to, if you're an English speaker or any other language speaker, you can go ahead and just watch it, because there is no verbal communication between the actors. March, and one of the concert highlights that I have here is March 30th, 7 p.m., Gerard choir at Komitas House Museum. The concert is dedicated to 150th anniversary of great composer Komitas, and there are various other events going on within this framework. So make sure you follow our event calendar to find out more next time.
Yeah.
And we're about done.
Yeah, and just a little hint or preview of what's going to be next week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to kind of continue the theme maybe a little bit. We're going to be talking about roots. I believe so. I believe so, but you have to ask him to know for sure. We're going to be talking about roots and ancestry and stuff like that. I'll be sharing some stories about going to visit the town in Italy and the town in the Netherlands where my great-great-grandparents are from. Aramast will be talking about something similar from his experience, his family history, and Ina's got some stuff as well. So we'll be talking about kind of identity and culture and things like that.
Thank you,
we also are
Stephen.
going to have a guest, aren't we?
Of course, we'll see.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for introducing. And I want to remind to our listeners who missed this show, you can check out our website and our official page, because we're going to have the recording of this show.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you listen to what this beautiful and smart lady tells about theater and its importance. And also, I'd like to remind you that you can download our application and listen to Radio Van anywhere around the globe. Have a safe weekend, great Saturday night.
Thank you for joining us on the Great American Weekend, and thank you for coming in, Sonya, and sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.